Hi, thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Jules Keith Lay. I'm with the Center for Teaching and Learning, and I am coordinator of the Active Learning Academy. Today's workshop is sponsored by the Active Learning Academy. Our topic today is engaging students through gamification, and we are welcomed by two active learning leaders from UNC Charlotte, Cynthia P. Bush, lecturer in the Belk College of Business, and Bobby Hobgood, EDD, Department of Languages and Cultural Studies. Thank you so much, Cynthia and Bobby, for giving us this presentation today. This is a very exciting topic. We're going to have a great time. The floor is yours.
All right, well, thank you and welcome everybody. So what we're going to do today is Bobby and I will introduce ourselves briefly. We'll do a small thing to try to get to know a little bit about you and why you're here. And then we are going to dive into gamification. So that's the plan for today. And then of course, we'll leave time at during the presentation. You can feel free to ask questions, and we'll also leave some time at the end. So in terms of me, I've been here at UNCC for about 3 years. I am an escapee from the corporate world. So prior to this, I was an investment banker in Wall Street in Europe for many years. And then I oversaw about 25 billion in assets at TIAA. So that's my background. I will say that when I lived in Europe, because we were communicating quite a bit back with the States, we did use some of the online tools, but they were primitive compared to what we have today. So this is a much better environment. I'll also say that thanks to the global pandemic, and obviously there are a lot of horrible things about it, one of the small good things about it is that it has forced me and others to up my game in terms of how I communicate and engage with students in the online environment. Bobby is an absolute expert at this, and so you're going to hear more from him later on it. I am new in the world of gamification, so I am just beginning my journey in it, but can certainly share some, kind of tips for those of you who are interested in getting started. Any questions before I open a poll to find out more about you? All good? All right. So I am going to go ahead and start. This is a very brief poll. If you could please respond to it. And it should have popped up on your screens. And I'll give everybody just a minute or two. Okay, looks like the bulk of you have responded. And we have a wide variety of experience as it relates to teaching online. Looks like about 40%. The first time was when we were all thrown into it last spring. And then we got a sprinkling of other folks who've been doing this for some time. And then the second question asked, had you used badging before with your classes? And it looks like the vast majority have not. And then a few have a little bit of experience. So this is fantastic. Now, let me, Jules, I went ahead and closed the poll so you can see that. The other thing I want you to do, and you can do this right in the chat. So if you look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see the word chat. When you click on that, where it says to, make sure it says everyone, and type in there what you hope to get out of our session today. And you can share that with everybody. And after you're typing, just hit enter and we'll see what we've got. All right, I'm reading through these. Okay, so these will be our marching orders for today. And looks like most people are here looking for new methods to try to enrich their classroom, whether it be synchronous or asynchronous, in a way that is truly fun and engaging for students. And so that's perfect because that's what this is all about. So on that note, I'm going to turn it over to Bobby and let him drive from here. All yours, Bobby.
Okay, all right, great. Let me just do a sound check and make sure you can hear me okay. I see some head shaking, right? And you can see me in the little bitty window here, although that's not as essential, but those of you who can see me, you see that I'm not wearing pajamas today. That I actually did dress up for the occasion. So I'm one of those folks who actually believes in looking good for the camera. My name is Bobby Hobgood. I am the director of the Language Resource Center in the Department of Languages and Culture Studies. I have been in this role since fall of 2014. Prior to that, I was at UNC Chapel Hill for the bulk of my adult career, a little stint at the Friday Institute for Educational Innovation, where I did some national work with online platforms. And then in version 1.0 of my life, I taught high school French. So I actually left some planning work earlier today. Oops. And I see, there we go. Thanks for that. Doing some planning work for my French students tomorrow, and actually thinking about engagement, as a lot of you noted, because I have 28 students in that class. That is a synchronous class. At UNC Charlotte, as the director of the Language Resource Center, I support faculty and students in the use of our active learning classroom, the Language Resource Center. You need to come and see it when we can all come back face to face on the 4th floor of the College of Ed building. I also teach graduate level courses in the College of Education, as well as undergraduate French here in the Department of Languages and Culture Studies. So I want to share with you today kind of my journey in the use of badges. And the title of this session is about gamification. And I will tell you that my goal was not to gamify my course. And in the truest sense of gamification of a course, I don't think, some people might say my course is not gamified. Others might say it is. But I'm actually working toward a more intentional use of gamification. What I'm going to share with you today is what I've done with badging and what I've been doing for the past 3 years with badging. By the way, I also neglected to mention to you, I've actually been teaching online since 1996. Now, the tools we were using back then were far less sophisticated than Canvas. So if you're struggling with Canvas today, let me just tell you, this is like driving a Jaguar compared to the Pinto or the Nova that I was driving in terms of online teaching platforms in 1996. The course I'm going to share with you today as an example is an asynchronous course that I have taught. This makes the 7th time I've taught the course. It's a master's level course that is a combined course of 2 advanced methods courses in the College of Education. The first is advanced methods of foreign language. And then the second is advanced pedagogy for teaching English as a second language course. 95% of the students in this course typically are classroom teachers in the K-12 environment. Some of them are teaching internationally. I, as someone who, a curriculum and instruction specialist and a technology specialist, I have always maintained that we do not start with the tools, we don't start with the technology, but we start our work as educators with the student learning outcomes or student goals. Okay, that's what drives my work. So while the terms gamification and badging might sound very sexy and very interesting, I would caution you about embracing them and following a pathway of integrating them into your teaching without first taking a strong look at your learning outcomes and goals. So as I was saying, as with any planning that we do, don't start with the tools, because if you do, you'll become a slave to the tools. What's most important is the tools should serve your needs. So while you are learning about badging and gamification today, please don't convince yourself that that's what you're going to do. Instead, look at what you're currently doing in terms of learning outcomes and the challenges you face. In this context, for this course, I faced two challenges, and these really dovetail nicely into what we heard earlier as you expressed what your interests were for coming to today's webinar. The first was procrastination. Those of you already teaching online know what I mean when I say we create modules. We hope students will participate throughout the week, but what tends to happen far too often, they wait until Sunday night before the beginning of the next module to do all of the work. Now, in language education, that is deadly, okay? Because you can't cram when it comes to learning to speak, listen, read, and write. Also, I would say in any other course, it can be quite deadly as well because they lose the potential for interaction by waiting until the end of the module. So if you are asking students to interact with their classmates via discussions, but they don't begin working until the end of the module, the end of the week, then clearly there's no time for that interaction to occur. So that was my first challenge when I first began teaching this course online. I had far too many students waiting until the end. As an interim solution, which actually worked quite well, I then began creating midpoint due dates during the week. So mid-module, I would say, you must post your first posting to this module by this date so that between this date and the end of the module, students can reply to you and vice versa. So that helped, but I still was not getting the traction that I thought was necessary and good for this particular course. That's challenge number one. The second challenge was in those interactions, I found that, as is always the case in any group of learners, there were a number of students who did the bare minimum. So if the instructions for a discussion were to make a posting and then to react to someone else, then in terms of that original posting, if I have a rubric, and I do have a rubric for discussions, they did the bare minimum every single time. Not all of the students, but a good number of students, the bare minimum. And then likewise, in their responses and interactions with their classmates, they did the bare minimum, okay? So their contributions overall were not very significant. And I would say, especially for this particular audience, disappointing, because I thought, hey, first of all, this is grad school, and please somebody raise your hand in this group and tell me that you have said before, I have high expectations for you as grad students. Please somebody validate me in saying that. And in fact, for undergrads, would you please validate that you have said at least once, you're a university student. I have high expectations for you. Okay, great, thank you. I see a lot of thumbs up. I see some visual hands as well. So, we really want more out of those discussions. So those two things kind of pushed me to say, I need to do something. So I went about this process, okay? And this is a process I think we all know. I had identified a challenge. I then explored some options. So how can I address this? Is there a way pedagogically in terms of strategies that I could address this? And then I also, after looking at pedagogical solutions, I turned toward technology and I said, are there technological solutions that I could call upon to help me address these two major challenges? So I ended up doing a couple of things. So some pedagogical strategies, like, for example, midway during the module, making sure students had posted once to the discussion. Okay, so their initial posting. That was the kind of the procedural pedagogical thing. And then the technological challenge, or solution, I should say, I happened upon badging and the idea of kind of creating an incentive and kind of gamifying it and saying, hey, look, you can get this badge. And if you collect a number of badges, those equate to a certain number of points. And as you'll see in just a bit, and those points can be added to your final grade. Okay, so you could potentially increase or improve your grade in this course by virtue of doing these two things. Now remember, what are those two things? The first is participating early during the course and throughout the week. And the second was making substantive contributions to discussions. Okay. So in my mind, if I could get students to do that, that would also address the issue of engagement that a lot of you were talking about. Incidentally, I have to tell you, I've been doing a lot of speaking nationally and around the state and at the university on the topic of engagement, both online and on ground. And when you think about engagement in either online or online courses, remember there's the engagement that you can see, but also the engagement that you can't see, what I like to refer to as minds on or mind on engagement. And so when you're thinking about engagement, I want you to really, as you're exploring solutions yourself, think about how will I see the engagement? In other words, what evidences can I see in my course? But then also, how will I know that students are engaged, that they're really doing this not because they are, quote unquote, playing school. They're doing this because it's meaningful and purposeful for them. Okay. Do you know what I'm talking about when I say playing school? Give me a thumbs up if that resonates with you. Okay. Playing school. We don't want students just to play school, right? So I selected a particular tool, and I learned about this tool through the Center for Teaching and Learning. So again, shout out to CTL. You're always there when I need you. I implemented this tool for the first time 3 years ago in my course. I liked what I saw. I asked students, I do this technique that I call micro feedback. Every week at the end of a module, I have embedded a Google form with no more than 4 questions. And those questions are about what happened during that module. What happened in terms of your learning, and also anything else. I always have at least one open-ended question so that they can share anything else with me. So I was sure to gather some feedback from that first class on the use of badging. And it was that coupled with what I observed in my evaluation led me to say, you know what, this is worth it. I'm going to continue using this in my classes, okay? For me, I will tell you, and you've probably had this happen as well. Have you ever had that student or students who, when you offer the opportunity for something like you can get a badge and something goes wrong technically, they'll let you know it. They will let you know it. And so these are the editors of my courses, the editors ex officio, because they will tell you, excuse me, Dr. Hobgood, but I really contributed substantively last week, or they won't say substantively, but I did a lot. I thought I did a lot last week. Why did I not earn that badge? Okay. So without me really saying much more than the introduction at the beginning of the course that I'll show you in a minute, they were already telling me, hey, I want this badge. Now remember, we're talking about, in my case, these are K-12 teachers. So if it resonates with them, I will tell you, I'm pretty sure it's going to go over well with our undergrads as well, too, especially given, their affinity for gamification and badging. What I did, as you can see here, this is a screen capture of that particular course. And you can see under the heading course modules here, I custom created a badge that reflected the focus of each of the modules of the course. So going from the top row left to right, the reflective practitioner was the name of the first module, SciUp for language teachers, the second module, peer mentoring, the third module, okay? Those also serve as navigation icons on the home page. I make sure to use those icons throughout the course to kind of brand what's going on, so that in module 1, they see that reflective practitioner badge. The other thing I will tell you is, hey, listen, I spent a lot of time using Photoshop and creating these badges. And so doggone it, I'm going to use those badges as much as I could. I didn't want them to just appear in one place. So I created badges that reflected each of the modules. They appeared on the homepage of the course. During the course orientation week, I explained to students via this page that they have the opportunity to get some extra credit. I don't require them to do this, and I will tell you, over the past 2 years, so this is the third year I've done it, but the last 2 years, 99% of the students chose to do it. And they did so consistently from the beginning through the end. So I explained to them how I incorporated badging into the course, and I invited them here to participate by telling them, I'm going to give you an easy badge. Okay, the easy badge you get for this module is at the top of every single page in Canvas. You can, and we don't have time for this today, but I can point you in the direction of this information. There is a way for us to create a Mark Done button so that when students are finished looking at that page, they just click Mark Done. Similarly, if it's a discussion forum or a quiz or an assignment, when they contribute to one of those 3 activities, it is automatically marked done for them. So there is a connection between the badging software platform and Canvas. When students click on those mark done buttons, it automatically awards them the badge. Okay, so that was set up for them. I do want to pause right now because I realize I've been talking a lot and see if there are any questions. If so, if you just click on the raised hand icon and we'll recognize you, or Jules can verbally communicate anything from the chat. Jules or Cynthia?
So we don't have anything in the chat right now, but I'll wait here and watch if someone wants to put questions in the chat. Otherwise, you're welcome to raise your hand as well.
Okay. Observing teacher wait time here, Jules. So I think we're good to go now. All right. So during the orientation, again, having invited them, I explained to them, you have the opportunity to earn really 3 types of badges. The first badge is awarded just by clicking on the Mark Done button and completing the activities in every single module. Easy. Okay. So I want you to pay attention to what I did here. What I did, by virtue of doing that, that's kind of like the lowest barrier, or the least, the path of least resistance to earning a badge. You get a module badge, which is worth a certain amount of points. Okay. The second opportunity for a badge that is automatically awarded is called the Efficiency Expert Badge. And you see that's the first badge here. This is the badge that I use to encourage students to participate early on in the course. And they earn this by logging in before Thursday. So if the module begins on Monday, Thursday, you see that's what, 3 or 4 days in, right? So more or less midway. They have to then click on a quiz called the Module X Efficiency Expert Quiz. And it's a 1-question quiz. And that question is based on something they would have gathered by doing a few activities up to that point. Do you see what I'm saying? So I'll show you an example of that in just a moment, but it requires them to have done a little something up to that point. They answer this 1-question quiz, and then when they get it right, the interface between Canvas and this platform recognizes they got the 1 question right, and it automatically awards them that badge. Okay. So
Bobby, I'm sorry to interrupt you. We do have 2 questions that came in.
Great. Go ahead, Jules.
Yeah, so the first one was, what is the badging software that integrates with Canvas? That's the first question. And then the second question was that, I don't know how to use this tool. Will you go over that?
Okay, so I'm going to show that tool in just a moment. I'll talk about that in a moment. So if you don't mind, I'm going to say to you all in the same way, with the greatest respect, the same way I say to my students, thank you for that excellent question. If you can wait just a little bit, there's a natural place I've already built that in, that I'll talk about that. Secondly, in terms of how it all works, if we've got time, Jules, I might be able to demonstrate it a little bit, but recognize that this is work that you'd have to do a little bit on your own. And by the way, Jules, I'm happy to offer my assistance to CTL if we decide later we want to offer a workshop on this tool. Okay.
I very well may take you up on that. Thank you.
Okay, so we talked about the first badge. The first badge was the Efficiency Expert badge, awarded by completing a 1-question quiz by Thursday midnight. Okay, and it is my solution for addressing that challenge of the students who were going to wait until the end of the module. My second use of badging was to get students to contribute more substantively to discussions. That badge I call the Knowledge Enabler badge. And you see that one, the second badge, the bottom badge there on the right-hand side. And that was awarded for substantive contributions or substantive participation. As you look at the description here, the requirements are that students must not only minimally satisfy all the criteria of the discussion rubric for each discussion, and that's each discussion that week. So maybe 2 discussions or maybe just 1 discussion. But as a part of that discussion, they also had to bring in a research article, a blog posting, or some other resource to bolster what they contributed and or to offer a solution for somebody else's posting or query. And then the third criteria was that they had to respond to at least 1 more person than required for that discussion. So if the discussion only asked them to respond to 1 person, if they had to respond to 2. If the discussion required they respond to 2 people, they had to respond to 3. Okay, so that badge again was my way of addressing this challenge of how do I get students to go beyond and to really make their contributions more substantive. So the gamification sort of piece comes in when I told them that the badges equate to points. And, you know, I was going with this super teacher theme. So these are super PowerPoints. So the weekly module badge is worth a certain number of points. The energy or the efficiency expert badge is worth another number of points. The hardest badge to get is the knowledge enabler badge. And that probably doesn't surprise you because as you saw, there are a number of criteria there that they have to satisfy in order to obtain that badge. At the end of the semester, I have totaled up or tallied the total points here, and those points equate to a certain number of points added to their final grade. Okay, so let me just pause here and see if there are any questions. Anything else, Jules?
Not yet.
Okay, super. So the efficiency expert quiz, here's an example of what it looks like. Before midnight on Thursday, okay, I created the quiz, and I do one for every single module of the course, and it's a 1-question quiz. And it's really not that hard, folks. But I did discover that by virtue of them logging in early, they were also doing other things in the course. So by virtue of being there, it's kind of this psychology of, well, I'm already here, I might as well do something, right? You know, so that tended to work really well in the course. All right, so that is the first quiz. Now, in order for the students to automatically receive a badge, the platform that I use is called Badger, B-A-D-G-R, B-A-D-G-R. And their logo includes an animal, go figure which one, right? A badger. Badger requires that all of the actions on the part of the student appear in a module. So they have to satisfy certain criteria within a module. Badger looks at the criteria for that module and says, okay, Jules answered this one question quiz for this module. She got it right. So I'm going to award her that badge. That means then that for that particular module, there's only one activity. So I'm going to show you what that means in just a moment. What do you mean one activity? I'll show you what that means. Okay. Now here's the Knowledge Enabler badge. Now this one is different. You might recall seeing in an earlier slide, I mentioned that the Efficiency Expert badge is automatically awarded by Canvas and Badger once students answer that one question quiz. However, the software can't look at a student's work in discussion postings and say, oh, okay, well, I see that Cynthia did respond to more than the one required person, and she included some sort of reference in her posting, okay? The software won't do that, so the instructor has to do that, okay? Now, I'm already doing that. I'm not responding to every single student's posting in discussion forums, but it's fairly easy for me to see that they've responded to more than one person. And in fact, there's a way to filter that in Canvas discussions. If you don't know, you can actually click on a student's name and see how many times they've contributed and what they've contributed in a given discussion. So that allows me to see, oh, okay, Jules did her original posting. Here it is. And boop, yep, there's a link to an article she included. And here are her postings, her responses to other people. So you can easily see that in the Canvas discussions. So this is where a little bit of work comes in, but I don't mind doing this because I was doing it anyway. So that means if Canvas doesn't automatically award the badge, then I have to, how do I do it? So once I've verified at the end of the week that Jules or Cynthia each have satisfied the criteria for this badge, I will send them via the Canvas inbox a message. And so what I do, for those of you who have used the Canvas inbox before, there's a way you can send a single message and it go to different participants, but they don't see who gets it, you know, kind of like BCCing somebody in or blind copying someone via email. And I send them this information that says, congratulations, you have satisfied the requirements for the Knowledge Enabler badge. Here is a passcode you need to complete this quiz. It's called the module, whatever, module 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Knowledge Enabler Reward. For that particular quiz, they don't answer a question. They just log into the quiz and, well, they do answer a question. The question is what you see here. Congratulations. You have been awarded this badge and you're going to get 20 points. Do we accept these points? And the answer, they have to answer that one question, which is yes. Now, for those of you who are thinking through the logic here, by virtue of answering the question, yes, I accept the points, then the quiz tells Canvas, this person passed the quiz. They got the requisite number of points, so give them the badge. Okay, so unlike the other badge where it happens without my intervention, I do have to intervene here to verify they've satisfied the criteria and then email them somehow the access code to take the quiz so that they can get those points. And just for fun, when they see that particular quiz and they see question 1, do you accept the points? They hear automatically this wonderful fanfare, you know, because, hey, this is, you know, 20 points. Okay? And so I found a way to easily embed just like a 5-second snippet, a fanfare within Canvas. Okay, so this is what I was talking about. This is the confirmation that they get. So I get the message. They get a link to that quiz. All right, so that quiz, they can't find it anywhere, so they get the link to it. Okay, and they get the access code. They say, yes, I want the points, and then the badge is awarded. All right. So I'm going to stop here before I go further and kind of let you see what it looks like on the student side. I'm going to stop and see if there are any questions.
We don't. Oh, here we go. We got a question. How does the instructor create the code to access the quiz?
It's very simple. You have a glass of wine and you just let your fingers go random on the keyboard. Okay. I'm sorry, I'm being snarky. It's just a random code. You just come up with the code. Okay. So each week for that particular quiz, the one that, the knowledge enabler quiz, I come up with a random code. And when you create the quiz, if you've done this before in Canvas, you can create a passcode for quizzes so that students don't automatically click on the link and the quiz opens. They have to have that passcode. So that's kind of a way to restrict taking a quiz. Okay, so if the student satisfies the criteria for the badge, then I email them, as you saw here, I email them this information. Okay, and this is a PDF actually. And so that's just a random code that I came up with. And I changed that random code from week to week. In other words, the code you see here for the Module 1 Knowledge Enabler badge is not the same code that they get for the Module 2 Knowledge Enabler badge.
I think that's a really great thing that you just pointed out, Bobby, because I think a lot of people don't. I think that when we train on quizzing in the Center for Teaching and Learning, when we go over the quiz settings, when you're creating a quiz in Canvas, there's the two tabs. There's the quiz settings tab, and then there's the questions tab. And when we go over the quiz settings, we tend to skip over the ability to put a password on the quiz. And so I think it's really great that you brought this up today because, when you're looking at your quiz settings, you do have the ability to put a password on it, to put a code on it. And if you enter something in, it can be totally random, like Bobby talked about. Just let your fingers go wild on the keyboard, document what that is, and then students can't access the quiz until you've given them the code. So that's another way to lock a quiz down until you're ready for students to take it. So thank you for bringing that up today, Bobby, and allowing us to share that with everyone.
Absolutely. Yep.
I don't have any other questions in the chat right now, so I think you're good to keep going.
Okay. So within the Canvas menu, once Badger has been installed, and that's something that CTL did on my behalf. Okay. So right now, Jules, I think I'm correct in saying you can't go into your settings of Canvas and say, oh, I want to install Badger. I don't believe that's an option. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think you have to put in a request for it. Let me explain why. Canvas bought Badger, or they struck a deal with Badger a little while, about a year and a half ago, I believe it was, maybe a little bit longer. And at first, Badger was a menu item on the left-hand side in Canvas that anyone could add to their menu. But then it became very confusing because it's limited in what you can do with it. And UNC Charlotte is not paying for the upgraded version. And so since we're not paying for the upgraded version, we didn't want a lot of people to start playing with it, getting excited and saying, can you buy this, when we don't maybe have the money for it quite yet. So there is a free version of Badger that you can have enabled. You can put in a ticket at help@uncc.edu and request for that to be added. But it will be the limited version. And you won't be able to get if you're going through and you're trying to do something and it says you need the premium version of Badger, just know that we don't have that right now at this time. Okay.
Great.
And let me jump on that too, because the words limited and premium can have different connotations for different people. Mm-hmm. So while, as Jules said, it doesn't have the full functionality of the paid version, you can still do a lot with it. So I think for people who are just starting out, the version that we have access to should be sufficient. Yes, there are some more bells and whistles that as you get more proficient in it, you may want to add those, but for someone who's just starting to work with badging, I don't think it's really necessary.
I completely agree with you, Cynthia. So I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of help tickets asking for Badger after this session, and I'll make sure I let my IT reps know that they're coming.
I will say this though, this does require some work. Okay. Do not take this lightly. If you're going to do this, you maybe need to think about it a little bit first. It requires some work. You have to have everything set. You have to test it before the semester begins. Okay. If it's not set up and functioning properly, Your students will let you know it in a heartbeat. So as is the case with everything, measure twice, cut once. Okay, put the planning time in. So this is a screenshot. Once Badger has been installed and integrated, in the course menu, there's a link for Badger. It doesn't read Badger, it just says badges. Okay, so as the instructor, this is what I see. This is not what students see. They don't have all of the tabs across the top that you're seeing here, but this is what I see. The default view that we're looking at now is called the objective view, and it simply shows you all of the badges that I have selected for this course. Okay, so as you see here, the first column, the name of the module, and then as you're setting it up, where you see these X's right here to the right of each of these badges, that originally is a drop-down menu from which I choose the badges that I have created. Okay, so there's a place where I create and upload badges. So I say, okay, associate this badge with this module. Okay, you can require students to physically submit some evidence. I would discourage that. That's too much work for you. And then it tells you here what type of badge is this. This is a badge that they get for completing the module. So as Jules had mentioned before, if we had the paid version, there would be more type of evidence that they could submit, and they could have different functionality. But for right now, the version we're using, the free version, the badge is awarded at completion of a module. Okay, so you're seeing not all of the badges, but you can see there are 34 possible badges students can earn in my course. Here is another view of that interface. And you'll notice here, as you look at the first column, this is the leaderboard view, meaning it can actually show you how many badges students have obtained at a certain point in the course. They can see this as well, but what they see is not their classmates' names, because we can't do that. So Badger automatically creates an alias for every student. So the individual student knows that, oh, okay, my alias is the theoretical dragonfly or the robust elephant. Okay, they can see how they compare to their classmates. They can also see an archive or a catalog of the badges that they have obtained thus far in the course. Okay, and I think, Jules, that is my final slide there. So I'm going to stop sharing right now and see if there are any questions. We've got 15 minutes left. I might be able to do a little demonstration if people are interested. Marlon's got his hand raised. Marlon, go ahead, please.
Hi, I have a question about the leaderboard. So I've read some articles saying that leaderboards can be demotivating for students who are on the bottom of the leaderboard. Is there a way to show them like their position relative to where they were across the previous weeks?
Where they were previously, you mean?
So like if you have 30 students and someone is at the bottom and then they move up, it would tell them that they moved up 3 or they dropped 3 as opposed to.
Sure, yeah, what you're showing, it doesn't show that progress, okay? The only way they would know that progress is by logging in. You don't have to make the leaderboard available in your course. So if you're concerned about that, it is an option, it is not required. I will tell you, however, in my course, so the course I've used this in, remember, is a graduate level course. These are adults, quote unquote, for the most part. And so they love it. Like I said, I've had no problems with it. Now, if somebody has had a problem with it, they haven't told me personally. Okay, so that's your decision. For right now, I've made it available for my courses because they like it and it's motivating to them. But you do raise a very good issue. Perhaps in the paid version, there's some way for them to track their own progress. Currently, the only way that they could do that is they could see, oh, okay, last week I had 3 badges. Now I've got 5.
Gotcha.
I've got 6. Yeah. Great question, Marlon. Thank you so much.
We've got another question that's come into the chat here from Cynthia Hancock. She says, can you talk about how you feel about this type of extrinsic motivation versus intrinsic motivation? And
Absolutely.
maybe others chime in too if they want to.
Yeah, it's totally optional. Okay, so I don't require my students to do it, okay, at all. But yet, like I said, 99% of them have done it. Okay, so yes, it is an extrinsic sort of motivator, but it tends to work with these students. Now, some of you are probably saying, that's not going to work with this type of student. And you're right, it's not going to work with every type of student. So you're going to have to make that decision to what extent you would want to include this in your course. I would like to think that my students as grad students are a little bit more intrinsically motivated than perhaps undergrads might be, but that's not always the case, depending on the course, because we have required courses in grad school in the same way that we have required courses as undergrads. And I'm going to be honest, I know that not everybody loves my course because it's my course. Okay. So I don't have a hard and fast answer for you on that, other than it has worked for me. I do not require it in my course, yet 99% of my students have done it. Okay, the whole concept of the discussion, and it's a great question, Cynthia. That would be another fantastic workshop, though, Jules, actually, is looking at intrinsic and extrinsic motivators in asynchronous and synchronous courses.
It would, absolutely. I have a note here. Did anyone else want to chime in on that before I ask Bobby to do something for us?
And one thing, actually, I'll make a comment on, not related to that, but Bobby showed a number of ways that he sets up the badges, some of which require some manual intervention on his part. For those of us who have large classes, so at the undergraduate level, I'm typically teaching more than 100 students. So when I was thinking about the badging and ways that I could use this to help motivate some of my students, I tried to make sure that everything I did was something that required no manual intervention because for the 100 students per class, that can get to be quite a bit. So I highly encourage anybody who's thinking about adopting this to really think about the problems that you want to solve, how this tool could help you solve that problem. And then if you have large classes, to really tend to go towards the area where you don't require a lot of manual intervention. That'll make your life a lot easier.
Yeah, absolutely. Excellent point, Cynthia. Jules, go ahead.
I was going to say earlier when you were talking about how it would be valuable for them to see what this might look like in Canvas, because in order to make the badge award, you put one assignment in one module. I think that might be a new idea for people. And so I would love it if you would demonstrate that for us, please.
I'm all over it. Okay, so here is a course and here is a module. Okay, and I want you to notice a couple of things here. By the way, my word for spring semester 2021 is notice. And I have been using that with my French undergrads and my grad students, noticing, because I'm really concerned that we're in a world that we're bombarded with so much information that we fail to notice what's important. So it is a word not only for my students, it's a mantra for me as well, to notice. All right, so what I'm going to ask you to notice, a number of things here. Each of the items in this particular module, you'll see here's a page. If you look at 1.2, that is a discussion, and you can tell it's a discussion by the icon there. Now, notice also that for these items that are pages, module 1 welcome, 1.0, 1.1, you see underneath them mark done. But then if you look at the item 1.2, this is a discussion forum. You see contribute, and you see the due date by which they have to contribute it. Let's drop down to 1.5 and you see a different icon. This is a quiz, and you see submit. Okay, so we add to every module, in order for Badger to integrate and work, there's this piece here, claim your badge. And that's how Canvas and Badger communicate, okay? When you have created all the items in a module, if you look here to the right-hand side of the title of this module, Module 1, the Reflective Practitioner, you've got these 3 dots here that let you edit the module structure, okay, which includes the order of items within the module and information about that module, the characteristics of the module. If you click on Edit, you get this window, the module settings, okay? And here's something you may have not noticed or looked at before. So I want you to notice this. I click on requirements here. Students must complete all of these requirements. You are originally presented with one drop-down window, and I'll show you what that looks like. It looks like this, or add requirement. And see how it adds that little window there? Can somebody shake their head up and down? So I know you're saying, okay, great. Olga, thank you. I see your head there. This drop-down represents every single item you have inserted in that module. When you choose a particular item, like the overview here, you then, on the adjacent drop-down, you tell Canvas, I want students to simply view the page, or I want them to click on a Mark as Done button, or I want them to contribute to the page. So if it's a quiz, an assignment, or a discussion, it's contribute. If it's just a page that they read, it's mark done. So I'm going to delete that one. So in my case, they complete all of these things, okay? I'm going to click cancel. By virtue of doing that, I have then told, and I can't show the badges piece right now, Jules, because there are student names that you'll see that I can't block out. So you'll just have to trust me on that piece. But I think the important piece is for you to see when you do this, and if I go into settings, what does this look like from the student perspective, student view? So when students see that module, okay, they click on, here is that page. Here's that Mark Done button I was talking about. Do you all see that? The top right corner, Mark Done. So they click that. It's also a great way for students who have a tough time remembering, oh, have I done this yet? Have I looked at this yet? So this, I'm serving another purpose by inserting that Mark Done there, okay? Let me go back and show you, here's another page. So the overview page of the module, again, there's the Mark Done. But if we look at, for instance, in this module, the discussion forum, the first discussion forum, you'll notice there's no Mark Done here. That's because by virtue of posting to the forum, the Mark Done action is automatically operationalized on the part of the student, or by Canvas rather, okay? So now you were asking about if a badge is awarded. So I just showed you the module badges. So I set it up for module badges. How about those special badges like the efficiency expert and the knowledge enabler? Because they have to do something different, right? So in my module section, bear with me, I'm scrolling all the way down beyond to these modules here. What I did, as you notice here, there's a module called the Module 1 Efficiency Expert module. And when they satisfy the requirements in this module, they get that badge. Here's the Module 1 in Knowledge Enabler module. When they satisfy the requirements, they get this badge. And you notice that in both cases, if you recall from my presentation, what they do to satisfy the requirements, in this case, is they complete a quiz. So they complete this quiz, they get this badge, the Module 1 Efficiency Expert badge. They complete this quiz, they get this badge. Okay, so what triggers the awarding of the badge from Canvas to Badger is completion of a module. And completion can mean different things based on the rules you set up when you click here and you edit the module. So as you can see here, in this case, for that Module 1 Efficiency Expert, remember, that's just a simple quiz. Right there it is. They have to score at least 10, which means if they don't get the question right and they don't get 10 points, they won't get the badge. So that's also a way of me, figuring out, hey, they're going in without doing anything in the module. They're trying to trick me. Okay, so I hope that helped a little bit. It's a little more complex than what I showed you, but I hope I gave you enough insight so that you understand how it works and how I'm using it to address those two challenges I had in my course. As it turns out, the concept of engagement, students from the two prior courses told me via feedback, it also engaged me. It engaged me further in this course. I'm going to turn it over to you, Jules.
I just wanted to answer another question that we had in the
Sure.
chat. Lindy was asking the module completion or check is done or submit settings. Are those part of the Badger integration? Actually, it works with Badger, but if you like that format for modules, you can set up your students to move through your modules in that. You don't have to use Badger to use that move through, check as done, submit as, and it actually gets used a lot in asynchronous classes. Asynchronous online classes is a way of keeping students on track, moving in the order that you want them to move in, and kind of engaging them and making them feel like, yes, check, I've checked that off my list. But so that's already part of Canvas modules. It's already there and you can use it by itself, but it is the function that works with Badger that makes Badger work.
Yes. I will tell you, I happened upon that feature by accident when one of my students, a grad student, maybe the second or third time I taught the course in Canvas, Jules, said to me, hey, Dr. Hobgood, in a previous course, our professor had these mark done buttons, and that really helped me to remember and to stay on track in a module. And I thought to myself, you know what? That's a smart thing to do, because even with adult learners, folks, I mean,
I love that. As a
love it too.
doctoral student, when my faculty have used the mark dones with me, I love it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I know we're running out of time here. A lot of people are having to leave us. Thank you for joining us today. One last question, and then I'm going to stop the recording. Marlon's asking, there was an external link to collect your badge at the end of each module. Do the students have to interact with that? How do they interact with that?
Yeah, so that is something that you set up. That's also a Badger thing. When they complete the module and they just go on, they look at that page, that's what triggers that awards the badge. So that's an LTI. That's one of those things, if you've ever, when you add something to a module, you might recall having seen linked to an external tool. Mm-hmm. Okay, if that rings a bell to some of you. So that's what you insert in there. And that's extremely important too, if you're requiring any evidence.
So they don't have to click on that, Bobby? It's going to automatically give them the badge?
They go through there. I think they see the page and it gives them the badge.
Okay. So they click on it and then they see that they've received the badge.
Right.
Okay, I think that answers that question.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we've got a lot of people thanking you for this wonderful workshop, Cynthia and Bobby. This has just been incredible, and I think it's going to probably start a revolution with the CTL help tickets that I like. This is some good trouble that we're getting into here, and I'm probably going to come back to you to talk about this again. We will be posting this recording on our YouTube channel, so if you want to go back and watch it again, you can, and share it with your colleagues. And perhaps in the future, we'll have a special Badger workshop hosted by our facilitators today. So we'll see about that. I'll be working on getting that possibly set up. Thank you everyone for joining us. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.